Okay, so let's talk about Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a responsive framework, I guess you could say that. Basically what it is somebody else wrote a bunch of HTML, CSS, starter things for you. So all the main things you would do usually when you start a brand new HTML project, it's kind of already done for you. So you just take that as a starting point and then you build upon that instead of just designing every single thing from scratch. Now that has some downsides, it has also some upsides, depends on what you're trying to accomplish. But I'm not gonna get into the debate why you should or should not be using Bootstrap. Today I'll be covering Bootstrap version 5. It doesn't really matter which version if you're new to Bootstrap. So if you've never used it, whether you're gonna be doing version 4 or version 3 or version 5, main core concepts are all the same. Now for me, I'm using 5. Now V5 right now is just being developed, which means that right now if you just go to getbootstrap.com, it will take you to version 4. So if you want to get to the same version I'm using here, you have to go to v5.getbootstrap.com. And at some point, if you're watching this in the future, you would just do this by simply going to getbootstrap.com and it would be under V5. The main thing I like about V5 from personal standpoint is that they're finally dropping jQuery. I have nothing against jQuery, it's just I never use it, so having that as a dependency usually makes no sense for me. So all you need for this, you need basically to go to this website and you need some sort of text editor and a browser. So browser, I'm pretty sure you already have. Text editor, you can use any text editor. I'm gonna be using Visual Studio Code. So that's this. So you can download it by going to code.visualstudio.com. I'll link to a video how you can install this if you want to install it. But any text editor will do. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna go to my computer, create a folder, and again, I'm gonna be on a Mac, but it doesn't really matter what system you're on, it's all the same. Just give this folder some name, and I'm just gonna drag it over here to open that in VS Code. And here I'm gonna start an HTML file, so I'm gonna click on this little plus sign and create a starter file. So we'll just call this one grid.html. And here is where we're gonna write our HTML. So this is where I'm gonna go to the website right here and click on Get Started. That's gonna take me here. I'm gonna scroll down and get to this starter template. So I'm just gonna click on this copy and go to my text editor and paste that right here. So that should basically just get the main template we need to get started with Bootstrap. Now right now this has an e.1. So if I go ahead and just open this file so you can see what it looks like. So there's that file in that folder. I double click on it. There we go. We got hello world. So going forward, I'm not going to be going here and double clicking on this grid HTML. I'll be using the live server extension that you can download and install under this extensions tab on VS Code. See live server. So once you have it installed, you could just right click and do open with live server. And this is just gonna automatically reload it for me. So the first thing you want to learn about Bootstrap when you start is the grid system. So the grid system is what allows you to do like some sort of layout. So do different column layout and things like that. So to get to the grid system, I'm gonna go back to this getting started documentation and I'll go to this layout section. And here we have the grid. So I'm gonna click on that grid and you'll see there's an example when they've created this 3-column layout. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna copy all of this, go back to my VS Code, remove this H1 that says hello world, we're not gonna need it, and replace it with that code that should be basically a row that creates 3 columns in it. So if I go ahead and save this, go back and take a look, see we got this 3-column layout like this. Now, in order for you to be able to see what we're actually doing here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually create our own class file so we can give some styles so it's clearer what's actually happening when we apply these different things in Bootstrap. So to do that, I'm going to create a new file here. I'm going to just call this grid.css. And the only style I'm going to make here, I'm just going to do a class BG for background. And we'll just apply some background color here, which will be a CSS background color. And let's apply some border to this as well. So now I need to link to this CSS file from my HTML. So I'll go over here, and inside of this head section, right below this Bootstrap link, we'll create another CSS link. Now, because I'm using VS Code, I get all of this autocomplete that helps me to do this faster. If you're in a different text editor, you may have to type this whole thing. So I'm just going to type grid.css, which is basically this file name over here. And to be able to see what I was doing here, I created this BG class, which should apply some background color and some border. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go here for each one of these divs, and I'll just add this BG class for the time being. And going forward, we may change this and do this in a different way. But for now, I'm going to do this way. So I'm going to add this extra class to each one of these divs that are inside of this row class. So if I go back and take a look at this, see, now you'll see that we have this green with another green, and there is the gray. And you can see how it doesn't go all the way to the end of the page. It just stops halfway through here. And the reason for that is because this structure here right now is inside of this div class container. That container forces that to be in a container. So if I just go ahead and remove this div with a container and this closing as well, so you want to be very careful with these. So you have to have the right openings and right closings. If I go ahead and save this so you can see what happens, see, now there is no container anymore. So this goes throughout the whole page. And we basically end up getting this 3-column layout structure. Now, the way this is going to work is we have this div that has this class row. And that div with a class row basically is going to contain all the columns in it. So we have these divs that are direct child for this div right here. This one, and this one. And each one of them has this COL-SM class. So for right now, let me just remove that SM so that I can show you differences between these. So I'm just going to do it COL, just like this. So basically we have a row, and in that row we have 1 column, 2 column, and 3 columns. So if I save this, go back, you'll see it's exactly the same thing as it was before. No difference whatsoever. Now, if I go here and just copy one of these column structure divs and paste it below, see, now I have another one of these COL divs inside of that same row. If I save this and go back, see, it automatically changed this to a 4-column layout now. And it's basically distributing those columns to be exactly the same size inside of the row. Now, this will be our first row. Now, we can add more rows to this same page by simply going below this div, that is this div that has the class row, and just doing another one. So I'm just going to copy paste, and this is going to be the next div with a class row, and it still has 4 columns inside of this one too. So if I save this and just go back and take a look, you'll see now we have 2 rows with 4 columns each. And you can probably guess, if I just copy this again and paste it below, it's going to be the third row with 4 columns. Now, I could go inside of the second row and delete one of these divs to have 3 divs, meaning 3 columns. And if I go back and take a look, you'll see now the first one is 4 columns, the second one is 3 columns. Now, one of the reasons that Bootstrap is so popular is because it has responsive classes built in. So let me show you an example of that. So if I go back to that same page, and let's just drag this on the side so we can resize it. So I'm going to go ahead and resize this so you can see what happens. See, as I'm resizing this, we get this to resize and we still get the same structure. Now, sometimes you want things to change depending on the screen size. So what could happen is that when you have a larger setup, you may want to have 4 columns here. But when you have a smaller setup, you may want to change how this entire structure works. Now, if we go back to that Bootstrap documentation, you'll see here under grid, if I scroll down, we're going to have these different sizes of grid system. See, there's XS, SM, MD. Here you can see what those sizes refer to as far as the actual pixel size. So see, XXL refers to 1400 pixels or higher. XL refers to 1200 pixel or higher. And LG refers to 992 pixel or higher. Now let's go back and change this, for example, from COL to COL LG and apply that same thing to all of these. And I should be able to do that in Bootstrap by pressing the Option or Alt key by clicking in all of this, and then I can just type in all of them at the same time, not in Bootstrap, but in VS Code. So now I have that LG for all of these, so I'm going to save this, go back. See, it's still the same thing. Now let's try to resize this and see what happens. Now you can see now I resized it just a little bit, and all of a sudden it just dropped that layout we just had. And that's because, remember, the LG here was referring to sizes 992 pixels or higher. So once I go below that 992 pixel size, it's going to stop using that layout. So basically we're saying that we want that to happen starting from a large size screen. Now you could change it to a different size. So if I go back, for example, and change this from LG to, let's say, MD, what should happen now, it should drop it at a later point. There it is now, the same thing. It's still going to be same sort of thing, but now it's basically dropping this at a later point. Now, by default, if you just use COL, you're basically saying, I want all of this to be proportionally sized exactly the same. Now, sometimes you're not going to want that. Maybe you want 4 columns, but you don't want these columns to be the same size. So for that, you have, let's actually go back to the docs so I can show you where you could find it. See how it says COL-SM-6. And again, that SM refers to the screen size, and 6 refers to the size of the column you need. Now, the way those sizes work is that the whole width of the area is considered 12. Depending on how large you want this to be, you have to use a proportion of that 12, basically. So in a practical sense, that would be, if I go here for this first one and do -6, we're basically saying this column should take half of the screen because 6 is half of 12. Now, right now, if I don't change anything else and just save this and go back and take a look, see, this first column took half of the screen, and the other 3 are proportionally taking the rest of the real estate. You could do it that way, or you can size the other ones the way you want them to. So you could say the second one should be, for example, 3, which should be like half of the size of this. So that should be quarter of the page. And then let these other 2 be taking the rest of the screen space. So if I go back and take a look, see, that's exactly what's happening. This is taking half. This one is taking half of this half. And then we got these 2 basically covering the rest of the space. Now, if you actually do sizes for every single column, so for example here, if I keep doing the sizing like another 3, what's going to happen at some point is that you basically run out of space. So we said the whole row has 12 columns, I guess we could say. So this is 6, this is 3, this is 3. So that makes it 12. So this is now extra stuff in addition to that 12. Now let's see what happens when we have this. And you can see now what happens is because these first 3 columns were taking all that space in the first row, this next column automatically is being pushed to the next line down. So we could now go here and copy another one of these. And then assign some sizes to these two. So I can say this one should be 6, and this one should also be 6. Which will pretty much be the same as not assigning any sizes, by the way, because 6 would be half, and this other one would be half, which would essentially happen automatically because these 3 are going to take the first row space, and then these 2 are going to be proportionally sized. So if I go back and take a look right now, see, these 2 are sitting below those 3, and they're half and half. Now, I could change that, and I could say the first one should take 8, the second one should take 4. And see, what I'm doing, I'm ending up with 12. So if I go back and take a look, see, we got that 8, and we got that 4. And if you don't cover enough, so let's say for this one you do 3, which doesn't add up to 12 total, it will basically just leave the extra space open, like this. Now again, all of these is going to work for medium size or higher because I did this MD class. Now if I go ahead and just resize this to make it smaller, after we hit sizes lower than that medium, this thing is going to collapse and everything is just going to sit on top of each other. But what I could do then, I could also lay out differently for different sizes. So let's say for medium devices or higher, I like the layout I had. But for small devices, I want a different layout. I could go here and add that layout as another option and say, when we get to a smaller device, we want this, instead of being a 633, we're going to make it 6 as the first one. And then the second one is also going to be 6. So at that point, this 2 on a small device will be taking that entire space for the first row. Now this third one, then I could say should take 12, like this, on a small device. And then these 2, I could say should be 6 and 6. So half and half. So now what should happen when I go to lower than that medium device, but higher than small size device? Because remember, this works starting from this and higher. So starting from small up to medium, these small classes are going to be applied. So 2 halves, 1 should take the whole screen, and these 2 should be halves. And these are going to be all the stuff in the bottom. For now, let me just clear that so this is easier to understand. Right now, if I save this and reopen this, see, we're on a small device. So you can see how what we're getting is this 6 and 6. So that's this first 2, half and half. Then we got the 12 that takes the whole area like this. And then we got another 6, which takes half and half again. Now, if I resize this to be bigger, see, once I hit that medium size, now it goes back to this medium classes. So it goes 6, 3, 3. So that's 6, which is half, and then 3, 3. And then we got 8 and 3. Now I'm going to change this one to 4 so that it covers the entire area. So the way this is basically working is that once you define something for a small size, unless you have a medium size, everything from the small size and up is going to use the small size. Now, if you do define a greater size like medium, then starting from medium, it's going to start using that. And it's going to go with that size for all the rest of the sizes, again, unless you have another size. So right now, we got small one, and we got the medium one. Now, we could also define what should happen when we go to a large size. And the order in which you're listing these doesn't really matter. So I'm going to do something like this to start this, which means now for a larger size, I can define my own sizes. Now I can say the large one should go like 3, 3, 3, 3, which means these 4 will end up taking the first row. And the last one over here, we can say should take the whole screen, like 12. So if I save this and go back, you'll see how this works out. See, now I'm on a larger size. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4. These are these 3s taking up that whole 12. And then I got the next 12 taking up the next row. Now, if I resize this a little smaller to get to that medium size, see, now we get to this medium classes. So we got 6, 3, 3, and then 8, 4. And then if I keep going smaller, I get to small size, 6, 6, 12, 6, 6. And then if I keep going smaller than small, it will just collapse and sit on top of each other. Now you could define sizes for that size too. So this is why you should go back and look into all of these different available sizes. See, the next one after small is XS, which is basically like a mobile device. You could say like a smartphone or something like that. So for an XS size, you could say, do these other things. All you have to do is just go and add that class as well. And that's pretty much the entire idea here, is that if you start defining the sizes, then the way it's going to take the 12, then everything that falls over the 12 is going to go to the next row down. And that's kind of the entire idea of this grid system. And this is going to work when it's inside of this row class. Now, this brings me to that container class that we were just talking about in the beginning. So right now, because we don't have a container, this takes the entire space going from right to left. Now, sometimes you want your website area to be constrained a little bit so it doesn't go all the way to the edge of the browser. And this is where you use that container class. See, they have this div container. So let's just add that back to our body right here. I'm going to put that entire row structure inside of this div that has this container class. So now if I go back and take a look, you'll see that now we have this endpoint. And if I change to a different size, see that white space is a little different depending on what size of the screen we're on. And as you can see on a mobile device, it's very tiny. Compared to like a smaller device, it's a little bigger, and so on. Now you may have a situation when you want this white space on certain sizes, but you don't want them on some other sizes. So you can control that again if I just go back and look at different containers. See, there are different containers here. So we have this regular container, which is the one we were using. Then we have the container SM. Then we have container MD, container LG. So if you look here, for example, container LG is basically going to take 100% of the size until we get to the large screen. So if we go back and change this to container dash LG, starting from that size, it's going to do the container. So if I save this and go back and take a look, so see, once I went to a smaller size than large, it doesn't do that white space in the edge anymore. But once I get to the large size, now it's there again. So you can just control which size do you want to start this at. So you can do XL, XXL. The same logic goes here. You can just go here to the docs and look inside of these different containers. And then there's this container fluid, which means basically don't do it on any of the sizes, that large white space in the end. So I hope that whole thing makes sense. Now let's get into a couple of other things here that could be interesting. So once in a while you have a row that, let's say, has just 2 columns in it. And you decide what you're going to do. I'm just going to simplify this. Let's just work with a medium size only. And let's just change this, instead of 6 and 6, let's just take it to like 4 and 4. So 4 and 4 doesn't make up 12. And that's pretty much what we're going to get. We got this first 2, and then the third one is empty. Let's actually add another background for this container class so we can see what's happening. So I'm going to create this class and assign it to this container. This should be more obvious. See, we have that container in the background, then we have these two columns. So now sometimes you want to have these two columns, but you want them to kind of sit in the middle of this container instead of being on the left of this. So you still want the size, but you want to be sitting in the middle of this space. So to do that, you can basically go here and see we have this columns section. And if I scroll down, see we have some of this alignment options, which is basically top bottom. That's not what we're trying to do right now. But we have this horizontal alignment, and see, like, this is what we pretty much have when we start from the left. Now let's say we want to have this when these are kind of sitting in the middle of this, and that would be this justify content center. If you're familiar with flex boxes, that's pretty much what's going on here. But if you're not, don't worry about it. So we need to just assign this to the row that has these columns in it. So if I copy that, go back here and assign it to this row, just like this. If I go back, you'll see how it now sits in the middle of this. And if I resize this, it's still gonna sit in the middle of that area, which is kind of nice. Now you can also play around with like different positions here. See, for example, we can do this way to go to the right side, and that would be this justify content end. Or you could have them kind of spread out with these other options. I'm pretty sure you get it, so you'll just apply the appropriate one. So you want to just look at this example and match the one that you're trying to do out of these different examples in here. So this is talking about column wrapping. The whole idea, if you have more than 12, see, it's not going to fit. And see, if they have a 9, then 4. 9 and 4 adds up to 13, so that's not going to fit. So it's going to drop it to the next line down. And I guess offset would be a useful one to talk about really quickly here. So let's just make another row. And I'm not going to do justify content for this. So now it's just going to be a regular row. Now we have that first one. And this one is just doing it normally. So sometimes you'll just want to push this a little bit to the right. Not like center it or something like that. But you may want to just do like one column over. And again, when I say one column, I mean from that 12 size grid, you can just go one to the right. So this is where you can use offset. And if we go back to the docs, we can have an example of that too. So if I just keep scrolling down, see, all of these is right here. So basically, mostly what I'm teaching you is how to use this documentation. So if I keep scrolling down here, see, offsetting columns. Over here, see, there's this offset that you can apply. So for example, if we take this offset, and again, as you can see, everything goes with this sizing in mind. So you can do that offset on a medium size, but not do it on a small size, something like that. So if I go here and assign this offset to this and just do offset 1, so basically that means just push it 1. See, it creates this extra space. So you can do 2 to make it a little more spaced out. I don't end up using offset very often, but once in a while it's possible you might want to do something like this. So the last thing from this section I'm going to talk about is reordering things. See, there's this ordered classes. And basically what it means is that when you have these columns, basically the natural order of things is that whatever appears higher in your HTML is going to go to the left, and the next one is going to go to the right. Now, once in a while, you may want to change that. And usually you need this because you need things to change in one way on a mobile device and a different way on a desktop. So let me give you a better example of this. So let me just remove this other row and keep this row over here. I'll get rid of this justify content thing. So let's say we have this sidebar area, and here we have the main content where we're going to have our articles and forms and what's not, basically the main thing the person is going to be dealing with. And this is going to be a sidebar, which will be like a menu sort of thing. So if I save this and go back and take a look, see we have the sidebar, I'll make the main content bigger. So let's make it 8 to take the rest of the space. So this is sidebar, this is main content. So this might be what you like on your desktop devices. But if you go to a mobile device at some point, when this is collapsing, you probably don't want your sidebar links to appear above your main content and stop the content from showing. Now, most of the time when you're structuring this, you want to structure from the mobile perspective first and then go to the desktop. So what I would do, I would actually move these things around and take this main one and put this thing on top like this, so that it appears first in my document. Now with this, if I save this and go back on my mobile device, see I have my main content and then the sidebar area shows in the bottom. Now if I resize this to make it bigger, it's not gonna take the sidebar and put it on the left. Instead, it's just gonna go with that main order. So left, right, because main content was on top. So this is where I might want to reorder this. So I could say, starting on this device, I would like this sidebar to go left and main content to go right. And that's something you can do with ordering. So if I go back here and look at this, see order classes, see the way it works, you basically just do order. And it basically is just 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I go back here and say this one should be order MD2, and then this one should be order MD4. If I save this and go back and take a look, you'll see the sidebar is now on the left, the main content is on the right. Now, if I scroll it to the mobile size view, you'll see the main content will go on top. So what's happening is whichever one is smaller order is going to go to the left. Now, the sidebar right now I have is order 2. So that's lower than 4. Therefore, it goes to the left. Now, you don't have to do 2 and 4. You can do 1 and 2. But, you know, depending on how many columns you have, you're just going to have to figure out how you go with this order. So I'm going to say 1, meaning this should be first, and 2, this should be second on a medium device with that MD. So again, as I go back, you'll see now the sidebar is on the left on medium device or higher. And if I scroll to a lower size, now the main content goes on top, the sidebar goes below this. And that's the order and why you may need to use it. And we'll start using some other things from Bootstrap in our next video, but for this one, that should do it. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.